Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Dailies on Network Television, where we keep you updated with all the news on the papers. I am Sada Elisha Dasham. Remember, we're live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can do well to stream live and watch us there, and also drop your comment and your views on any of the story that is of interest to you. I will be doing the program alongside Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Sally.
All right, we have a number of papers we'd love to analyze this morning, and we will be starting with the Daily Sun newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, don't hinder immigrating nurses, Obi urges NMCN. The big story on the paper, Northern Monarchs fear mass revolt, says Nigeria sitting on gunpowder, things getting to point they can no longer pacify people. You can find details on page 6. Diri begins second term, restates commitment to progress in Bayelsa. Vice President Shetima Jonathan, Liberia VP governors attend inauguration. You can find details on page 26. Tinubu orders Women Affairs Ministry to restructure World Bank loans and other grants. Labour Party suspends National Treasurer over fraud allegations against Abure. And on food crisis, federal government releases 42,000 tons of grains as at the 102,000 metric tons. Yeah, and then now we're seeing that they're down to 42,000. Even the 102 wasn't going to be enough. And now we're seeing 42,000 tons of grains. You can find details on page 27. $3,000 extortion, police dismiss inspector, recommends 2 ASPs for sack. You can find details on page 4. Rep proposed return to parliamentary government. Tinubu to attend 37 AU summit in Addis Ababa. You can find details on page 27, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
Another Blueprint newspaper, troops both in illegal arms factory recover AK-47 rifles in Plateau State. You can find more detail of that operation on page 6. Still on the paper, federal government can't continue to subsidize electricity. This is coming from the Minister of Power, Adilibu. We just hope that the federal government will actually look into this decision of theirs, because this will cause more hardship to Nigerians. And then still we're having the issue of the beverage business, where we're seeing beer consumers to pay more as NBL hikes the price next week. You can find more detail of that. And then we have the big story, federal government on food crisis, needing Nigerians to get 42,000 metric tons of grain, urges the media collaboration to amplify government policies. You find more detail of that inside the paper. We can't fold our arms amid insecurity and rising poverty coming from the Sultan. You can find detail of that inside the paper. And here we are having 60 reps commence return of Nigeria to parliamentary rule 2031, with the writer saying Senate inaugurate Constitution Review Committee. You can find more detail of that on page 16. 3.5 billion naira allegation, Labour Party suspend National Treasurer Opara. We remember there was a clash between the treasurer and the chairman, where she said the chairman is refusing her access to 3.5 billion naira allegation. And here we are seeing that Labour Party have actually suspended the treasurer. So we look forward to see more probe concerning that issue. And still on Blueprint newspaper, bag of cement now sell for 13,000 naira in Enugu. This is a survey. Just when we're looking at 6,000, 7,000 of a bag of cement, and then we're seeing that in Enugu, it will be 13,000 naira. So I'm wondering how landlords are actually going to be treating their tenants at this moment, and then the cost of building materials, of course, Rachel. I mean, there's so much. Each time I see things like this, I think I'll be developing a panic attack if we continue looking at issues like this. But I'm hoping that eventually the government, here we're seeing they are asking the media to collaborate to amplify government policies. And of course the media is willing as far as those policies are transparent, and then we can hold you accountable, and you make everything that is needed for the media to be transparent with your policies. The media are willing and ready to do that. So let's look forward to seeing what the government will do concerning that survey we just saw on the paper. Downside of the paper, Wike places 20 million naira reward on kidnappers. NLCDC parade 42 suspects. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. We have a picture story here where we can see the executive committee meeting in Kaduna of 2024. You can do well to grab the paper and see what that meeting was all about and decisions that was taken over there. And that's all on the Blueprint newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, insurers' premium income rise 25.9% amid economic hardship. U.S. provides pictures of crash location as Senate mourns. This is concerning Wigwe. You can find details on page 20. Edo 2024 Labour Party aspirants back state leadership position. Afewa slams Ida Harbon and then Osemoles alleged choice in APC. You can find details on page 13. And on hardship, we can no longer pacify our subjects, Northern monarchs tell Tinubu. UK lawyers can't practice in Nigeria, says federal government and the NBA. You can find details on page 8. The big story, bandits now rape our women and for our indigent lament. We are taking the right step to end it, says government spokesperson. We have sponsored suspected bandits, tell security personnel. Wiki places 20 million naira bounty on 3 wanted notorious kidnappers. Declares state of emergency on insecurity. NBA tells Tinubu, says country under siege by bandits and kidnappers. You can find details on page 5. Fares mount over likely shutdown as ticket prices rise. Governor Abiodun votes 5 billion naira to tackle rising cost of food. You can find details on page 10. We have a column by Olufasan on page 16. And Pissarro in talks with NFF over contract extension. This is on sports. You can find details on page 29. And then we have Ogun governor announces piloting, where we have a picture story showing the special advisor of the governor and then the governor himself. And then also another picture story, inauguration by Bayelsa State Governor Senator Diri during his second time inauguration at the Samson Siasia Sports Complex in the state yesterday. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
This big story is quite it's very difficult and a sad one for me. And then looking at the right where we're seeing that the suspended or suspected bandit is actually telling security operative that we have sponsors. And I hope that he will be drilled to actually mention the name of the sponsors, and that when he mentioned the name of the sponsors, will not be having them being protected. We keep saying the fact that the law is king. I have said that, and I believe that if I say the law is king, that is to say even the king is under the law, because nobody is supposed to be above the law. And I'm hoping that when this bandit gets to speak, I mean, he's not the first person anyway that has come out to say that, you know what, these are the sponsors, the former this, the former that, former governor, former director general, former, and then nobody is willing to tell us categorically this is the name of the person, or this is the organization that is actually sponsoring it. And then you could imagine the trauma that these people in Zamfara are going through. It has gotten to the point that they are being raped. Of course, Nigerians knew that something like this is going on.
Yes.
But then for it to make it to the front page of the paper, they're trying to bring this whole thing to light so that everybody know what is happening. We're seeing the monarchs are even saying that, you know what, we can no longer even specify our our subjects anymore, because the situation is beyond. Please be patient with the government, because how can you tell somebody who is hungry to be patient when he or she cannot buy food prices? So it's quite difficult to see stories like this without mentioning one or two things of regards to that. But I'm hoping, Rachel, each time we come here, it's just so that our leaders will know that we expect more from them, and it seems as if their effort is really not getting the needed the needed results Nigerians are hoping to see. So we hope to see better results when it comes to issues like this.
So imagine the audacity that a suspected criminal is telling security personnel that they have sponsors. For me, it says a lot. There's just so much in between the line that, you know what, for me to say something like that is giving out an information to say that, you know what, this crime is bigger than what you think it is. And then for him to also confidently give that kind of information, he knows that he will be drilled. He's going to go through interrogation. And he knows that eventually, even if that person is being mentioned, these are all the possible things that could be in play. That eventually, if that person is being mentioned, perhaps nothing can happen to that person protected, because I believe that it's not that the federal government or all the investigation we've had in the past, the list of terrorists, those sponsoring Boko Haram, it's not like the government don't have it. But who are those on that list? That is the question. And that is the question we should be asking, is who are the people on that list? No wonder they are not making it to the papers. No wonder it's not being publicized. No wonder nobody is knowing about it. We talk about the investigation at the Central Bank of Nigeria, and we know that more will come out with the Emefiele's case going on right now. But why is it silent? Why is it just bits and pieces coming out? Why are certain information protected and not? It just shows that, you know what, certain individuals need to be protected. And we can apply the same when it comes to corruption and when it comes to insecurity. And as far as I'm concerned, it just shows you the depth of corruption and how rotten it has eaten, even when it comes to securing the lives and properties of Nigeria. Because I don't think if I'm in custody and I'm a criminal, I would like to give a lot of information out there, because I know that my life is at stake.
Because you know they will go,
exactly.
They will be for whatever
they know they are untouchable. They know who they are under and all of that. So it's really a sad one. And then, of course, it's not surprising seeing what these bandits are doing. That is why they target women, because they have other ulterior motives concerning these kidnappings and all of that. But I just hope that the government is really, really on their toe, not just telling us that they would declare a state of emergency, but are actually in the process, and then eventually we will see the outcome of it.
Well, Rachel, I look forward to seeing the outcome of all of the steps they will be taking. Let's take a look at this day newspaper. Bayelsa to immortalize week win as Adeboye, Sanwo-Olu, Adiola, Adelusa, Adeluye visit the deceased parents, and we are having Zimbabwe billionaire strive mourn the late assets holding boss. U.S. agency released photos of helicopter crash. You can find more detail of all the story on page 9. Federal government tripartite committee on minimum wage to hold next meeting Monday. Sanwo-Olu to UK, consider Lagos destination of choice for investment. Governor distributes 750 million naira trader money to 15,000 beneficiaries. Says initiative will stimulate economic activities in the food market. We will work with Nigeria to reduce barriers to trade, says Badeluch. You can find more detail of that story on page 9 as well. And the Sultan of Sokoto is saying Nigeria sitting on keg of gunpowder. Says the youth unemployment pose grave danger, lament the nation's economic hardship, and declares the people deeply frustrated and hungry. And he's not the first person to say. We've also had the former president Obasanjo making that same statement last year, where he was talking about we are sitting on a keg of powder, and for us to be having elder statement coming out to state that the obvious is that something needs to be done to actually protect the situation. We have a picture story where we can see Abiodun's 5 billion naira intervention fund to caution the hardship in his state. You can find detail inside the paper. And coming from the president, student loan scheme to become operational in 2 weeks. We look forward to that. We will be keeping the government on their toe. Today it's already the 15th, so we will be looking at the next 2 weeks to see that the student loan will start rolling out. And that's all on this day newspaper.
On leadership, student loan scheme take off in 3 weeks, coming from Bajapia Mila. CBN raises custom duty rate by 2.6%, fifth time in 2024. We have trending, a Nigerian soldier seeks national recognition. And on numbers, Jigawa approves 1 billion naira free healthcare services. Vulnerable Nigerians to get grains free of charge, a statement coming from the federal government in bid to hit the hardship. You can find details on page 7. Northern leaders worried over state of the nation, says insecurity, poverty plaguing our people. Arrest situation before Nigeria explodes, Sultan warns. Stop asking us to be patient, Catholic bishop tells Tinubu. Reps propose parliamentary system of government. You can find details on page 4. Electricity subsidy rises from 1.6 trillion naira to 2.9 trillion naira. Expert list gain as Nigeria leads African solid minerals body. Wike places 220 million naira bounty on two kidnappings. You can find details on page 13, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, Forex crisis pushes petrol subsidy to 907.5 billion naira monthly, where we can see that the average fare paid by commuters from bus journey within and outside the city up by over 100%. And that's talking according to the MBS, that's about 0.23%. Now, if a fuel of liter is about 617 naira to a liter, we are looking at the fact that across many West and Central African countries, petrol prices hover between 1,004 to 2,000 naira. And then here they're giving us, like in Mali, a liter possibly is about 2,080 naira, and then in Benin Republic it's about 1,633 naira. In Ghana it's 1,500. In Togo it's 1,680. That is, you convert it to a naira. Now remember, Rachel, where they were mentioning there was the time it was on the paper that Nigeria is one of the cheapest places we can actually get petrol, that we buy it at a cheap cost, a bit cheap price rather. And then here we're seeing that our inflation presently is about 28.9%. Projections are it might actually jump to 30% very soon. And then with all of this thing that is happening, and then we're seeing that naira keeps, today it's up, tomorrow it's, and then you really cannot tell what is happening. I'm just hoping more will be done, because if they're, because we already seen marketers will soon be complaining, even though they have promised us there will be no hike. But Rachel, believe me, even if they do not increase the price for petrol, it's going to affect, because we'll begin to see people trying to tamper with the, either the what do we call it, with the pump.
Sure.
In a way that they actually get their gain back indirectly, even if they do not increase that. So we're looking forward to seeing what the government will do. It's not about buying it at a cheap rate, but making sure that we get value for our money eventually.
Sure.
Even though we buy it at that price, but we should get the value for it, and then that the government will look forward to seeing how they can work toward. I think the best way we've said is just fix the refinery so that all of this will go down. One of the column coming from Olufasa, he made mention of the fact that as far as we do not work toward making sure that we refine our own crude oil, we will keep buying it at a higher price, and then Nigeria will keep paying the price for solution that our leaders have refused to think carefully through it. So let's just see how this whole thing will turn out to be eventually.
We are definitely bigger than all of these countries here, and we are at the top of oil producing states or country in the world. So therefore, we are not supposed to be in comparison. These people solely depend on importation of oil. They never had a boom like we did. We've had refineries that we've left to die down. So what is the comparison all about? It just shows our failure. I keep saying that anytime the Nigerian government tries to make any sort of comparison to make Nigerians feel that our situation is better, it shows failure. It does nothing more than to show the failure of our system and the government, because we are supposed to be doing better, way and above what we are doing, because we have whatever it takes. But we are seeing bad leadership, bad governance, we are seeing politics at play, we are seeing negligence, neglect, and selfishness. Not selfless. We are just seeing a complete chaotic system that haven't favored us for years, and we think comparison will just make things look better. No, it doesn't. It obviously does not make anything. So I just hope that rather than these kinds of comparison, it shows our failure. Let's just wake up to, you know what, we don't want 617 naira to a liter. We want it way less and below this amount of money. Let's take it back to how it used to be even before subsidy removal, and if possible take it lower. But we know how the economy works as it is.
High and come down in Nigeria before. I can't remember.
For oil is possible, Sele. Maybe not for our currency, because not for our currency, looking at our industrial level and all of that. But for oil, Sele, it can go down if the government is willing to. Yes.
Well, let's see the willpower coming from the government. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we can no longer pacify Nigerians over hunger hardship, Sultan warned. You can find detail on page 3. And then we have retail investors in Luch as fresh delisting plans near conclusion. APC INEC tender conflicting documents at Bayelsa Guba Petition Tribunal. You can find detail of that news on page 29. Troops bought illegal weapon factory in Plateau State, and then Senate begins constitution review as reps canvass return to parliamentary system in 2031. Wike places 20 million naira bounty on 3 wanted kidnappers in Abuja, while we're having other papers saying 2. Here, the Guardian is saying 3. Well, let's look forward to which of the papers will actually give a clear story concerning the bounty. Out of school children epidemic and 68 billion naira UPEC fund. You can find that editorial on page 12. And coming from the power sector, between subsidy, cost reflective tariff, and service delivery, you can find more detail of that as well on page 4. And electricity tariff to double as federal government consider hike over debt burden. Detail of that can be found on page 2, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune newspaper, the big story: Nigeria sitting on keg of gunpowder. A statement from Sultan says Nigerians are agitated, hungry, and angry. Take immediate measures against current hardship, tells federal government. Overhaul Nigeria's security architecture, NBA tells Tinubu. Details can be found on page 2. Federal government to distribute 42,000 grains free, and then says affordability is greatest threat to food security. Federal government can sustain 1.6 trillion naira required for electricity subsidy in 2024, coming from Adelabu. You can find details on page 6. Ogun rolls out 5 billion naira palliative. Details can be found on page 8. 60 reps want return to parliamentary system. Senate unveils 37-member Constitution Review Committee. Senate demands comprehensive investigation concerning the Wigwe helicopter crash. You can find details on page 8. FIRS faults 2.5 billion naira tax road credit scheme. Why we borrowed $3.3 billion for CBN. This is coming from NNPCL. Lagos empowers 15,000 market traders with 750 million naira. You can't gag Nigerians. CUPP cautions federal government against social media restriction. Ban on sachet alcoholic drinks and anti-people policy. A statement coming from NLC and TUC. You can find details on page 19, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Can NLC and TUC actually concentrate on something better?
How is
We're
it
already
anti-people?
seeing where in Zamfara women are being raped. And Rachel, from most of the time we've seen on our papers, every time they ask for ransom, not only did they ask for money, they ask for food and drugs.
Yeah.
So imagine, because with this sachet, it's easier to transport it.
Sure.
I know the number of youths that are nuisance right now because of they have easy access to it. And no wonder not only is the sachet being banned, but also the PET bottles. You normally see the small
Yeah,
bottles
those
are very
tiny.
affordable. So I really don't know how much they buy, but I'm sure it's not even up to 300 or 500, depending on whichever type they consume. So imagine if they take that out, it becomes difficult to transport all of these things. Of course, we saw the only pain will be for people who are out of jobs, according to these companies are saying about, I think about 500,000 or
Yes.
5 million was the number.
500,000 there.
Yeah,
that was
because
the
I
first
tried to say
number.
5 million Nigerians
Yeah.
are out of jobs. So we keep saying, I mean, NLC need to fix their priorities right. Let us know who you're fighting for. Let us know what your focus is for Nigerians as it is presently. Nigerians are dying of hunger. You are fighting for things that will not add anything to them. I just hope that NLC actually and the trade union will actually see this thing from another point of view. And anyway, I think maybe that I'm speaking on behalf of other people that feel that it's a better way to actually, there should be a better fight than this presently.
When there's a need for a cleanup, it doesn't have to sit well with everybody. It doesn't. And then this is one of it. It makes sense if TUC is coming because they are trade union. Exactly. And then, of course, a lot of people are making millions when it comes to trading these sachet alcoholic drinks. But then there's a need for cleanup. And NAFDAC needs to do their job, whether we like it or not. And some of these drinks are poisonous. and we know they're not regulated as they should be. So many fake out there, and NAFDAC
A
is
lot of
not
fake.
against alcoholic drinks. I mean, it's Nigeria, we have them, it's not forbidden and all of that. But these sachet ones in specific, there's a need for a cleanup, for there to be better regulation and all of that. So regardless of what TUC or the NLC is saying, and of course we are not at a position because we feel that is not our job, so we don't feel the plight, but there's a need for cleanup, and usually when something good needs to be done, it doesn't have to sit well with a
There's
lot of
pain involved in it.
exactly, there is. But I personally believe that this cleanup is needed in Nigeria, especially for these kinds of alcoholic beverages. And also, you know, let's stop having destitutes on the street as a result of consuming things like that. It's important to secure the future of Nigeria. And if this is one, it might be just a little bit, 0.001%, but if it will go a long way, it should be able to go a long way. And then TUC, NLC, and whoever should just allow NAFDAC to do the needful.
They need to do their job. Well, let's look at New Telegraph newspaper on road construction. Federal government berates Buhari over 2.59 trillion naira tax credit scheme, whereas NNPCL Limited clarifies $3.3 billion loan to CBN. More details found in the paper. Budget financing 2.5 trillion naira targeted from sales of saving bonds. Detail on page 8. Tinubu seeks Senate approval for CBN Monetary Policy Committee. And then we have Defense Student Loan Policy. Bajabia Amida charges NAS leadership. You can find more detail on page 26. Fidelity Bank extend Oyile's appointment as the GMD and the CEO. You can find detail on page 25. And on the Japa syndrome, reverse regulation stopping nurses, Obi tells the NMCN. You can find detail of that. We saw how many nurses have left the shores of Nigeria in 3 years. So we're seeing the Labour Party presidential candidate coming out to say there is a need to reverse the regulation, where we also saw nurses taking it to the street to protest. So let's look forward to seeing what this organization for the nurses and midwives will do concerning that regulation. And the big story in New Telegraph, over 60 reps signed to return Nigeria to parliamentary system of government by 2031, says presidential wasteful retail development. So you can look forward to more of that story on page 2. FCT High Court vankers, we have lawmakers raises the alarm over exclusion of Southeast nominees. You can find more detail. That's talking about the Federal High Court vacancies. So we're seeing that the Southeast are actually being excluded from the nominees. So we hope that they'll look into that. And then Senate stepped down motion to probe $2.4 billion Forex backlog. CBN 10 trillion naira development finance programs. More detail on page 15. NDIC set to dispose properties of 8 liquidated MFBs. You can find detail of that also on page 8. And on hardship, federal government moves to crash food prices and give out free 42,000 metric tons of grains. We have some riders where we saw under here northern traditional rulers, Nigeria sitting on keg of gunpowder, and then take concrete sanction to address economic hardship, Khan tells the government. And here we have tension in Benue over influx of headers. We know that there have been a number of attacks in Benue, and we also saw the youths calling on the governor of the state to do something in regards to that. You can find more detail of that on page 3, 29, and 30. Downside, we have a study that said smoking leaves immune system vulnerable to diseases. Smoking leaves the immune system vulnerable to diseases. So for those who are actually addicted, I think it's something you need to read to see what it does to your system. You can find more on page 26. We have a picture story here where we can see the governor of Lagos State when he gave that 750 million naira to traders, and that's all the New Telegraph newspaper. But before we move further, Rachel, let's just take a moment to, take a breath, let you chew the stories, drop your comment on our handles, and when we come back, we will continue with the review. Please stay tuned with us.
The mandate of reaching out to the world with the message of salvation and truth is a zeal that has consumed us. Equa Television International is live 247, reaching out to the unreached with undiluted message of hope through its programming.
You can be part of what God is using us to do by praying for Equa TV and supporting Equa TV. Keep watching Equa Television International.
We are a Christian station with the driving force and mandate to reach out to the world with the gospel of salvation and truth through programming and soul-lifting events.
You can join on this mandate. Let's spread the gospel of truth and salvation to the world. Pray for Equa Television. Support Equa Television. Keep watching Equa Television.
Sharing with the world the message of truth to help people come to the saving knowledge of our Lord and King, Jesus Christ, as well as find solace in Him.
From sermon, theology, undiluted biblical principles to Christian music and drama that aims to give hope, peace, strength, happiness, as well as strengthen the faith of those who diligently seek Jesus Christ.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, the program is the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, among which we've seen that the government have released 42,000 metric tons of grains for free for Nigerians, especially the vulnerable. And we're also seeing that there is a push from reps. About 60 members are pushing for Nigeria to be turned into a parliamentary system of government because they feel that the presidential system of government is wasteful. So we would love to hear your own view. Remember, you can drop it on Facebook and on YouTube as well. I still have Rachel Tanzi with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, let's go through The Nation, which is our next paper.
On The Nation newspaper, Sultan Emir seek urgent action on insecurity and joblessness. APC governors caution PDP colleagues against incitement. You can find details on page 4. 50 shops gone in Lagos gas blast. Shetima Jonathan Obasanjo governors at Dairies inauguration. 35 billion naira fraud. Labour Party sacked whistleblower. You can find details on page 3. Battle for Edo ticket. 12 APC aspirants face direct primary. You can find details on page 6. Why electricity subsidy can't continue by minister. 2.9 trillion naira needed this year, not available. You can start with the details of this story on the front page. The big story on The Nation newspaper, federal government releases 42,000 metric ton of grains to ease food crisis. Vulnerable persons get top priority. Ogun Oke's 5 billion naira intervention fund. Details can be found on page 2. Sanwo-Olu gives 750 million naira to 15,000 traders. You can find details on page 6 and then a picture story showing the large check. At the downside of the paper, NBA to challenge Nigeria-UK Memorandum of Understanding. Tinubu 4 AU Summit in Addis Ababa. You can find details on page 3 and that's all the news on The Nation news.
On the Daily Times newspaper, we have for 20 million naira, Wike wants 2 fleeing kidnappers dead or alive. Still on the Daily Times newspaper, federal government, World Bank in 3 billion naira broadband infrastructure deal. You can find details on page 2. Nigeria crook remains competitive with Europe, US grades. You can find more detail of that story on page 2. Still on the Daily Times newspaper, Senate FRS fault Buhari's 2.59 trillion naira road tax credit scheme. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. And we have the big story, Sultan lament mass poverty hunger in northern Nigeria. You can find detail of that on page 5. Federal government to release 42,000 metric tons of grains next week. More detail of that can be found in the paper. Federal government got 34 trillion naira from remitter in 7 years. You can find how did the government use that money effectively for infrastructure and other development in Nigeria. More detail found on page 4. We have a picture story where we can see the United Kingdom Secretary of State together with the governor of Lagos State when he was talking about how they can work together and Lagos being open for investment and the likes. More detail of that can be found inside the paper, and that's all on the Daily Times newspaper.
On the Punch, flying weekly orders in bad weather wrong. This is coming from the U.S. aviation lawyer Adeboye Sanwo-Olu Adeola Adeusi Aduluyi visits deceased parents. You can find details on page 22. Federal government to borrow over 2 trillion naira via bonds. This is coming from the Debt Management Office. The big story, Tinubu governors meet over food crisis as emirs NBA lament hardship. President governors meeting to proffer solution. Monarchs NBA lament economic crunch and insecurity. Federal government distributes free 42,000 metric ton grains. Ogun governor rules out over 5 billion naira intervention plans. EPO on ground as punchers intensify training for anniversary match. Technical problems through 14 Ogun communities into darkness. This is from the IBEDC. You can find details on page 27. Sanwo-Olu begins 750 million naira trader money payment. Details can be found on page 6, and then a picture story showing that. And that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
On the Metrics newspaper, IOC pledged to deepen investment in Nigeria. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. And still on Cyril Oshime rejoined Napoli weekend after AFCON duties. More detail of that story can be found in the paper. Labour Party suspend National Treasurer Opara over allegation of 3.5 billion naira fraud against Abure. Says she's been sponsored by same people who use Lamidi Apapa and others. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. Worsening living condition, APC PDP governors in war of words. A great disservice to Nigeria if leaders incite citizens against government, coming from the PGF chairman. Mere criticism or even playing to gallery for public applause. For public applause is not way to go. PDP governors playing ostrich when fully aware of what Tinubu was doing to reverse the situation. And I feel rather than channeling their energy to this, they should sit down and think together on how they can make Nigeria better. That is the only way, because we cannot have a better Nigeria. You definitely have either the opposition or other people pointing a finger and trying to tell you what to do and what you're not doing. And we've said this a number of times, Richard, the fact that rather than you exchanging words, why don't you channel that energy? Take in what you feel from the criticism, which will actually help your government, and then put in ground, because you actually do not have the luxury of time to be exchanging words with your opposition or with any other person when you know you have a lot of work on your table to do. So let's look forward to seeing our government, rather than exchanging words, channeling that same energy to work in and making Nigerians happy eventually with some of the policies they will make eventually.
Even if the current administration is PDP seller, we will see the same coming from APC, and we will see the same statement going back from PDP to APC. It has become a normal thing. However, I am looking forward to, let's just acknowledge the fact that everybody is Nigerian first before APC, PDP, and any other thing. So let prioritizing be that, it always comes from a position where the PDP feels if we were in power, we could have done better. And reverse would have been the case if it was the PDP in power, and then the APC would be thinking, we could do better. The important thing is take out that constructive criticism that looks like, this is the way. We have to filter it. On a normal day, it's not every criticism that comes your way, Sele, that you will accept it. Neither will I. You need to know the one that is coming from a genuine place, that this is a concern. However, I believe that the PDP should stop the back and forth with APC, allow this administration be. It's too much. Ever since office, let them breathe. Let's watch out and see. Let's wait and see how things unfold. Let's wait to see the policies. Let's wait to see what becomes of our naira. Let's see what becomes of the student loan. Let's see what becomes of our refinery. What have the government been doing with the subsidy? Give them time and let us just wait and look. The talking is becoming too much. It's just distraction left, right, center. No wonder, even if what the PDP is saying is probably right or correct, the APC will still see it from a point of attack, because you're talking about one too many things, everything. And there's no perfect government. I mean, we expect perfection, but they can't be 100%. There should be some room for excesses while they build. This is a new administration. Regardless of a continuing party, is still a different precedent. So let's just wait and see how things unfold.
Richard, you're sounding like the Senate president or the president. Let the poor breathe, and then you said
Yeah.
let the APC breathe. Well, we hope they will leave them to breathe, and at the same time, we hope that they know that they have a lot to actually meet up. So
Yes.
they shouldn't pay attention to every side talk being said to them. Still on the Metrics newspaper, Tinubu to commission Lagos Red Line project February 29. You can find detail of that inside the paper. And looking at the equity market, Forex turnover surges by 202.97% as official exchange rate settles at 1,499, which you can round it up to 1.5 to a dollar. More detail of that can be found inside the paper. Total Energies Nigeria's annual profit declines by 19.7% to 13 billion naira, detail inside the paper. And on insecurity, troops bust illegal weapon manufacturing factory in the Plateau State. You can find detail in the paper. Why Nigeria should return to parliamentary system of government, Reps minority leader and 59 others are stating their reasons for that. Hike in electricity tariff looms as federal government groan on the subsidy weight. You can find detail of that. We have a picture story towards a robust food provision for the masses. You can find more detail of any other story on the front page, and that's on the Metrics newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, again, CBN reviews custom duty exchange rate. And on employment scam, court denies fake UITH CMD bill. Tinubu to commission Lagos Red Line February 29. The big story, food palliatives. Federal government to distribute 42,000 metric tons of grains to Nigerians, cultivate 120,000 hectares of land. Kicks off ministerial press briefing series as Ogun State launches 5 billion naira intervention fund to tackle food inflation. And on 3.5 billion naira scandal, Labour Party crisis deepens as NWC suspends treasurer. Nigeria's corruption rating improves, now ranked 145. This is coming from Transparency International. You can find details on page 2. You just have picture stories, one of which showing Sanwo-Olu launching the 750 million naira trader money that will target over 15,000 traders in Lagos State. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On First News newspaper, reactions as IMF confirm return of petrol subsidy under Tinubu. You can read that to know if it is true. We've had the president coming out 1,000 times, the presidency as well, stating the fact that there is no return on the petrol subsidy. And here we're seeing IMF are confirming that there is a return. So you can read more detail of that story in the paper. The big story on the $6.2 million CBN fraud, which started from yesterday. Special investigator arranges 17 exhibit 9 witnesses against MFLS, PA, and 2 others. As Interpol activates red notice, alert widen drag nets for suspects. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. 60 reps propose bill to return Nigeria to parliamentary system of government. Federal government makes U-turn, says UK lawyers can't practice in Nigeria. EFCC operative arrests Futa student in midnight raid. Detail found inside the paper. Still, we're having this it's almost on most of our papers. Nigeria sitting on keg of gunpowder. Sultan won as Kaduna governor declared North epic center of terrorism and banditry. And we hope that that narrative will be changed soon with collective effort coming from everybody to change that. Military bust gun factory in Plateau State suspended Ondo PDP chairman dies. Electricity subsidy to go soon coming from the federal government. And downside we have court remand 13 suspected killers of Kwara monarch, and that's all new on the First News newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, AFCON 11, Osimhen missing, Ekong, Aina, Lukman make list. And on WTTC, Toriola leads team Nigeria to Korea. My encounter with Pesero coming from Bruce. Immobile penalty downs 10-man Bavarians. This is on Lazio Bayern, and Lazio taking the lead with 1-0 at the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. Returning Chukwueze gets Milan ovation. Salah back in full training. Madrid monitoring Huchlan. You can find details on page 3. Proms jailed for 6 years. And we have African games. We have the Eagles Falconets resume campaign today. The big story on the paper: silent operator. Ajayi was Eagles' unsung hero at the AFCON, playing every minute for the finalists. At the downside of the paper, Mon Award excites Onyeka and True. And then we have Punch anniversary. Apple Punchers intensify training for novelty match. And that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Alright, let's round up the show by looking at the Business Day newspaper. Electronic transfer booms unlock 40 billion naira tax windfall. You can find detail of that in the paper. Naira free falls for local entrepreneurs to seek diaspora dollars. Detailed on page 2. And on the subsidy removal, Nasarawa, Enugu, Anambra see the highest increase in FEC allocation. And the big story says exciting times for Nigerian cocoa exporters as prices soar. And I hope that Nigeria will actually take advantage of the window right now. We can actually collaborate with our cocoa farmers and see how we can, you've been talking about industrialization. And I'm hoping that this is actually a time for us to put our head in that and see what can come out of that, Rachel. And downside, we're seeing, they said the heat wave worsened, Nigerians suffering as blackout widens. Heat waves worsen, Nigerians suffering as blackout widens. More days of excessive heat coming, NIMET warns, and that is why it is important to stay hydrated as much as possible as you can. Because with the weather getting hot, even though in just the weather became cold again today, so you never can tell, but nevertheless, it is important to stay hydrated because you do not want to get unaware and give room to kidney stone and the likes of other illnesses that can emerge. Well, and that's all on Business Day newspaper. Rachel, thank you for
You're welcome, Celine.
And also thank you to our viewers and our supporters for making us part of your morning. Also, we come your way tomorrow. Do have a blessed day ahead.